200 miles from where the crash occurred. And these guys started, the first incident we know occurred by the Mountain Home exit in Idaho. One of the two vehicles involved here, the motor coach from Indiana there on the left, made a sudden pass in front of one of the Smoot brothers' trucks, and he reported it to the other drivers that there was a guy out here who, had caused him to have to slam on his brakes, and he almost jackknifed his truck. And that sort of set this whole thing in motion. And as they moved up Highway 84 from Boise, and they moved towards Vail, these two other drivers, after they dropped down into Oregon, these three Smoot drivers actually met up in Caldwell, and then they dropped down into Oregon over Vail, and they decided to cut across Highway 20 rather than taking Highway 84 up to Ontario, because it was a shortcut and they wouldn't encounter the traffic in Idaho. And as they went down the road here, now we've got these four drivers, and they passed through Vail, Oregon, and the three semis come up on the motor coach, and he's driving slowly on a flat part of the road there, and they get behind him, and all three pass him and legally pass him. And then he comes back and passes them as they go further down Highway 20. The motor coach should never have been there. In the manual from Horizon Transportation, it tells their drivers not to drive on Highway 20. A trial they tried to claim that was only for new motorhomes coming from a factory in Western Oregon. Then they claimed it was only for old motorhomes, that it were coming from an auction house here because they too were subject to rape. Then they said it was only for eastbound vehicles going east on Highway 20. It says none of that in the manual. He should never have even been there. He was taking a shortcut on Highway 20. Once again, they start going up through the hills, and in the hills, the trucks start trying to pass, and it's back and forth all the way through as they're passing east here. And the motorhome is holding back two of the three drivers from Smoot for almost 4 miles. And as they get up over Stinking Water Pass and they get to the final stretch of Highway 20 where this happens, at that point, the final pieces came into play. And just before this crash, as Mr. Demore said, James DeCou, the driver from Smoot, began a legal pass. There's a legal passing zone by the rest stop there after Stinking Water Pass. And the driver, Jonathan Hogeboom, who was in this $750,000 motor coach being delivered to Ben, held him out there in the lane, and it became no passing. And this is what happened in the final stretch. You can see, he got stuck there, and one of the drivers even disabled his Jonathan Hogeboom OnGuard system so that he could drive faster and keep him from passing. And the Allisons, again, coming back from what should have been a celebratory weekend when Matt's cancer had been just found to be in remission, they knew none of this. They were coming back from Crater Lake, and tragedy struck, and there's no reason that this should have happened. We introduced, this is all they saw. They never had a chance as they came down the road. And Jonathan Hogeboom, who was driving the motor coach from Horizon, he kept driving. And that was really shocking. He heard the crash, he saw the crash, he admitted that to the jury, and he kept driving. He said he didn't think it was stopped or safe to pull over there, even though one of the other Smoot drivers did pull over. And ultimately, one of the Smoot drivers ahead of them actually dropped his load and came back to see if he could render assistance. So, there was no reason that this terrible, senseless crash should have happened. It was an absolute tragedy. And it was all, again, because of aggressive driving and because of road rage, which are on the rise. And this has to be the chief focus of every interstate trucking company in training their drivers so we keep it safe on the roads for all of us. This is what happens. Anyway, we had joint liability in this case. Some of you know about that. If two drivers are involved, both in racing or any kind of other bad behavior, and one causes somebody else